Crew Pros, your single source for high-quality, affordable home services. If you are remodeling, repairing, or replacing, Crew Pros are the professionals that can do the job no matter the size. If you are thinking of remodeling your kitchen or bath, needing a new HVAC system, plumbing repairs, flooring, or a complete roof replacement, call Crew Pros. Crew Pros, proud sponsor of the Grizz 901 podcast.
Memphis. Nothing but Memphis. Everywhere we go, it's Memphis. Memphis, Tennessee, the beautiful land in the world.
And I'm thankful for this guy who tweeted and said I don't have that fire in my eye no more. That game right there was for him. That's what I do. I prove people wrong each and every night, and that's for him right there.
Hi, this is Tom Izzo at Michigan State, and you're listening to Grizz 901.
What up, Grizz Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Grizz 901, presented to you by Zach Jaworski State Farm, where they treat you like family. I am your host, Daniel Greer, and with me on a beautiful morning after, is this the morning after whatever happened?
I wish you wouldn't call it that, but yeah, that is what this is. It's a poor use of word choice, though.
Sorry about that. But yes, it's the morning after whatever happened last night. That's probably still not getting any better, but here we go. No. Let's bring in Nate. Nate, our guy, always with us, man. Last night was crazy. Last night was a game that you kind of want to forget about in a sense. And the Grizzlies, they're not playing well. The sky is falling, right? The sky is falling for all the fans. We just got done with 11-game win streak. What comes after a win streak? Usually a losing streak. It's all in how you balance it out. And we're on the West Coast. Give us a little bit of what's going on with your Grizzlies right now.
I mean, last night was honestly the only game I wasn't too offended by, for being straight up. I thought probably the best they've played is sort of a scheduled loss last night. They were coming off, obviously, short rest or no rests. They don't play Ja. They don't play Adams. And then the Kings shot lights out, man. I mean, that three-point showing was ridiculous. And I know the Grizzlies have been leaving dudes wide open, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But wide open or not, 22 for 40 from three is an absurd number. So I thought the Grizzlies actually were playing pretty well yesterday. I thought, they gave up a 47-point first quarter, but if you just had the Kings shooting 50% from three, it's like a 30-something point game or point quarter. And the Grizzlies are square in that game, if not with the lead. So they just had tired legs late. It was a lot of running to try and keep up with the scoring of the Kings, and it was never going to happen. The other two games, on the other hand, that we have not talked about yet, got some issues with. But we'll get into that in a little bit.
All right. Well, you heard me a little bit. I was on the No Bluffing podcast here. I think they released yesterday, I believe. We recorded that Saturday, so it was a chance for us to kind of talk through some things. I loved joining Chris and Luke and getting a chance to not be the driver. I could be the passenger. I could be the goofy guy. I could be really probably more of me and less of, Dapper Dan. Is that right? Dapper.
Hate that. It is right, but I hate it.
Okay. The Grizzlies last night in the Sacramento game gave up a 47-point quarter, right? They came back second quarter, gave up 19 points. They're down five going into halftime. They respond. They play well. They go down in the third quarter the Grizzlies dominate in the third quarter. And the reason they dominate, usually John Morant goes off in the third quarter. Most of the time he's not there. They go down. They're down 10 going into the fourth. And then you score 10 points in a quarter. 10 points. That is the issue. Okay. The last 5 minutes, though, maybe 5.5 minutes, you had all the scrubs come in. And let me give you the point totals from the scrubs. Don't take offense if I call them scrubs, right? The 5 guys that came in, the game is out of – you just can't win at that point. The 5 guys, usually G League guys, the people that were brought in, and the Sacramento fans are screaming, light the beam as soon as they go to the score table. Kenny Chandler, 5 minutes, 0 points. Vince Williams Jr., 4 minutes, no points.
Yeah.
David Roddy, he played 18. He played a lot of that, 0 points in the 18 minutes. Jake LaRavia, the 5 minutes, 0 points. Kenny Lofton Jr., his 5 minutes, he scored a bucket. He had 2 points. That's half of the issue. So don't take too offense to that 33-10 fourth quarter. Literally, there were 5 minutes of 2-point basketball.
Yeah, not to mention all the end of the bench guys for the Kings came in and they just all had Michael's secret stuff on the bench because they were getting buckets too. They didn't stop getting buckets. Usually both benches come in and it's all just trash. There's no, the Kings just kept draining shots. So yeah, listen, they just had tired legs last night. That's all it was at the end of the day. I was not upset about last night at all.
Yeah. All right. So let's get away from that game, right? So the Grizzlies lost the game. I predicted on that show on the No Bluffing podcast that they would lose this game versus the Kings. I even said they would lose against the Warriors. And then they're going to go back to Minnesota, pick up a win, and then come back home against Indiana for this whole week, a 2-2 week. I predicted it. I honestly didn't think we would lose against the Suns. Okay. And we lost. So that was already just adding on to the Lakers. So overall, let's
debacle that game was.
Let's get into the 3 games without getting too in depth because I do want to talk about 2 different things here, right? And let's save those for later. But give me a little bit. I do want to talk about their defense, which is a perimeter defense, 3-point defense, and then the rotation questions because I think that's what's on the mind of a lot of people is the rotation. But let's summarize for the people. If you haven't been around and you just listen to our podcast, thank you. But let's summarize these last 3 losses.
Well, one thing I do want to talk about a little bit with the perimeter defense is I think that because of the Lakers and the Kings shooting is being overblown. The Lakers are not a good 3-point shooting team, and the Kings are a really good scoring team, but they're not shooting 57% from 3 night in, night out, right? They're not even shooting 40-something% from 3 night in and night out. That was such an outlier for both them and the Lakers. I'm not super concerned about it. I am much, much more concerned about the free throw stuff, which we can talk about that a little bit later. I think that's much more of a topic, but just on the defensive front, well, there's definitely concerns to be had from the past few games. I don't think they're in the sky is not falling type of concerns, which is my main thing. The defense is not that terrible. Last night, I thought they were really slow on rotations because they were overhelping a ton, which can't happen. That's the one thing that can't happen is overhelping. We're too far into the season for that issue to be resurfacing. I think it's more so because of laziness than it is game plan or guys not knowing what they're supposed to do other than Zaire. I think Zaire has not made a correct defensive rotation all season. But I think in general, as a team goes, they were lazy against the Lakers. They were lazy in the first half against the Suns. I didn't watch the second half, full disclosure. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Even when it got close, I didn't watch it. I'm not ashamed even a little bit. All the people who said Zaire is having his coming out party, and then, we watched the Kings game about that. But then the Kings, it was just tired legs, I thought was why there were slow rotations. And you got lineups that you don't want to be playing. Yeah. So I think it's a little bit overblown. That being said, the laziness bugs me. And against the Lakers, like I said, that honestly, the Lakers shot maybe their best 3-point percentage of the year. I haven't looked to tell, but they were shooting the lights out. I mean, Westbrook was a plus percentage. I think Kendrick Nunn was a plus percentage. They just traded like 2 days after that.
Real quick, let me
in the first place. Go ahead.
Let me stop you there because the Lakers shot 31.7% from 3, 40% overall. The Grizzlies
lights out for them.
Shot 31% from 3 and 42%. So they actually overall the Grizzlies shot a better percentage within the game. And the Lakers average on a yearly basis this whole year, they average 33.7% from 3. So just
on how many attempts
to give you those stats. I don't see the attempts on here. It just gives me percent.
Well, I'm just looking at 41 attempts. at 31% on super high volume for the Lakers, I would say.
That's true.
And so that really was an outlier that was even a game in general. But it was still, I mean, it didn't look at all like the Grizzlies showed up. I mean, it just looked like they were out there to have a good time in LA, which is probably what they did. And then probably again in Phoenix, which is why you had the first half you had, which it bugs me. It didn't bug me as much in the Lakers game until you get to end of game execution and you don't figure it out. That bugs me because you got basically 30 seconds of execution you need to go win a game, and you don't have it. The Suns bother me a lot more because you come off a loss you shouldn't have had, and you were super lazy in that game. You don't show up ready to play. That bugs me. All of that to say, I still don't think the sky is falling. I think they could show up and lose to the Warriors. I don't think the sky is falling. I don't think there are any season-long major concerns out of these games other than what has already been addressed, and that they need more shooting, and they probably need more of a veteran presence on the court. That's about it, which is what it is. It is what it is. I would be concerned if they show up with no fight in them against the Warriors, but even if they get beat, I'm not crazy worried about it.
Yeah, so a little bit on the Lakers. They averaged 10.4 3-points made a game while only shooting 30.9 attempts. So, yes, that 41 is obviously up, 10 or 11, depending on how you look at the number. But realistically, they're also over their number of how many they made. So within that 10, they made an extra 3 than they normally make. So they went 3 of 10. So pretty much a 30%.
Also, a fun fact in that game, they went 13 for 41 from the 3-point line. They also had 41 attempts from the free throw line that game. So that was super fun to watch.
Yeah, the fact that there's 81 foul calls in that game, it's ridiculous, okay? Just ridiculous. Yeah. Let's not get into it too much. I don't want to spend too much time, rehashing what happened because I think we already know what happened. And it was 3 games that we look at, and they're 3 bad games. But let's get into a little bit about this team, though. Like, why don't you think they show up with the energy? Is it because Dylan Brooks had a birthday out in LA or Phoenix, and they just literally the nightlife took them?
The answer is yes. The answer is they were on an 11-game winning streak. They're the fourth youngest team in the NBA until you take Danny Green out of the equation. I think they're the second youngest team in the NBA.
Yes.
And they're in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Like it's
filling themselves.
Yeah, it's what happened. I mean, listen, the Grizzlies need to be humbled crowd. I mean, Grizz fans should be the ones saying Grizzlies need to be humbled when stuff like this happens. And the good news is they get like that. And the other good news is when it gets to the playoffs, these are the kind of concerns you don't have when games matter the most, right? Yeah. Like if you get down to it and they're in LA for a playoff series, I'm not worried about this happening, right? Yeah. Again, to Phoenix for a playoff series, I'm not worried about this happening, right? So there's no major concerns here on my part. The maturity thing is, I think they're super mature. They play amazingly mature basketball for how young they are. And I think we lose sight of that. I do think they would benefit from a veteran on the court. Maybe that's Danny Green. He's doing 5-on-5 work. He's obviously a good trade piece, but he could still be sticking around. We don't know. Good luck getting into the mind of the Grizzlies front office. I got no clue. But they could definitely benefit from that. I'm just not worried about it. I'm just not, right? It's annoying more than it is concerning. That's like I'm watching that game last night. I'm like, why'd you guys lose those first 2 games? Now I have to watch this and think about it. We've lost 3 in a row. I'm annoyed because of the first 2. And it's annoying, but no concerns other than we need more shooting. We need more shooting. That has to happen. I think they absolutely need to make a trade for more shooting. I do not agree with maintaining the long game approach, the development approach they've had in years past, because at any moment that future can be taken from you from a freak injury or anything. So I think they should go for it.
Yeah. Listen, I am right on with you. Like, I am never going to say play the guys you have because you're scared of literally maybe letting one go and one develops into an amazing player. Like, I don't see that in the guys we have that we've drafted. I think they can be good players, and I think they can be very good role players. I don't see any of them that are on the bench, honestly, anyone outside of Ja, Jaren, and Bane that you literally can't come off of because we're scared to make a move. Now, obviously, I don't want to let go of some guys. I really like Santi. I think he plays well. I really like BC for this team. He's kind of the change up to what Steve-O is, kind of the change up to the big that maybe Santi is. I think he's a good change up if you're talking like baseball terms where you have the good fastball, which is Jaren. But then you have maybe somebody who's a little bit different in the change up of somebody like BC. So I don't want to come off of him, but let's get into some rotation questions real quick. Okay. Yep. And that kind of leads us into, I guess talking about this because of literally trade talks, right? And that's going to happen for the next, we'll say month or a little bit less than a month, whenever the trade deadline is. There's new reports that some mystery team, I don't know what you can call them. You can call them the Grizzlies if you'd like, that have offered 3 first-rounders for OG.
That makes me think of the Airhead mystery flavor. The white Airhead, and you're always wondering what it's going to be. That's all that comes to my mind. Sorry, continue.
Hold on real quick. Is the Airhead mystery flavor a flavor, or is it one of the other flavors that they're just dying white?
Middle school me could answer. Current me has not a clue in the world. I don't remember.
I think it's its own flavor. I think it's a mixture. That's my take. I think it's a mixture. I love it.
Just before they add all the processed dyes and coloring that are super good for your heart.
Yeah. So it's the best Airhead. It has no dyes.
All right, I derailed us. I apologize. Keep going.
I had to keep going. I love that. I love Airheads. Unfortunately.
That's why you like me.
But yeah, so the Grizzlies have a lot of questions to answer. And that's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit, is because I think that the Grizzlies are in a spot where they could go for it. But I'm also looking at the rotation, and last night brought into a question of, we're playing against a team that's fast. We have a point guard that's not playing. So we're going to go ahead and put the backup point guard in. He's on the team. He's active in Kennedy Chandler. And we did not make that decision. We chose to go a different route. I'm not going to knock the coaching staff for going a different route, because I think that takes a lot of guts to say, hey, we're going to try something different because we think this is a better approach. That's not on Taylor Jenkins. That's not on anybody. That I'm telling you, that decision is coming from discussions from the entire staff. Okay. This is not a one-man thing. I don't think Taylor Jenkins ever makes decisions and said, this is what we're going to do. He might confirm, I like those ideas. This is the decision we're going to go with. I think this gives us our best chance to win. I don't think it's ever a Taylor Jenkins decision, even though he's going to get the most backlash, right? But I will say that we were going against a team with smaller guards. We have big guys. I don't know if they're scared to make the decision between Conchar and Roddy and Zaire right now. We talked about that on the No Bluffing podcast. Are they just scared to make that decision, and that's what brought them to having Conchar or Desmond Bane be the two guard, or the backup point guard? What do you make of that?
I think it was the perfect opportunity to try things. Like, okay. No one, you have been, and this was always, I think, probably the plan going into this game. Because I think if you win the first 2 games, or either one of the first 2 games, and there's not an ugly scene around it, and the guys are getting rest, it's a scheduled loss. I think if you lose both those games like they did, then you're playing ugly basketball. Why not experiment on the second night of a back-to-back in a game you're probably going to lose because the team's not clicking? And there's a perfect excuse to try different things. So I think it was always a game to try stuff. And as much as a fan, I want to tune in every night and see the Grizzlies going full bore playing Grizzlies basketball. I joked with you. It's like on that whole 82 games is a long season. I'm like, well, 350 days, I got to show up to work every day and stuff. But let's be honest, like, I don't bring my best to work every day. Nobody does. And so I like to make the joke, but in all seriousness, you're not going to get that. So it's like, okay, throw a game away, try some different things, see how it goes. Desmond Bane, who's been awesome over the past couple weeks since returning from injury, right? He had a little bit of rust, but been pretty good. He's not been the facilitator, and his dribble has not been comfortable. His handle has not been as comfortable as it was before his injury. Why not give him the point guard duties to try and get back into that, right? I mean, it's not what it's been. It has not been what it was since before the injury. Let him get there in real game, live action, doing it, because then he's going to see, okay, I can't do this, I can't do that, but he's going to get more comfortable with it, even if he is coughing the ball up, which he did. But we're all going to be a lot more happy come April, May, June, when he's able to sit there and drive the ball and be a secondary handler and be really comfortable doing that. So I think that was the main thing in it, is letting stuff like that happen. I don't think it could have been an experiment with Conchar to see what he could do, but like, we've already seen Conchar in expanded role this season. We know what he is. He took the dreaded Conchar floater last night, and there was no doubt in my mind it was going to be the brick of all bricks.
Yeah.
And we just know what he is at this point, right?
Yeah.
I think taking Roddy out of the rotation was a mistake. I've been pretty vocal about that. I think you want to have a rotation where Roddy isn't a regular, but as the Grizzlies are currently constructed, he should be. And Zaire, as much as I am very disappointed in his play so far this season, I was also very vocal about what I think his potential is, and I've never wavered in that. I'm just wavering on what his production is so far, and I think they're going to keep playing him because of what his potential is, and I don't blame them for that at all. It's still been garbage.
Yeah, they didn't play. The bench didn't play well at all. 25 points out of your bench for the Grizzlies when you're down 2 guys. Like, that's not what you need. Like, you have to have somebody show up. Like, literally, Trey Lyles almost outscored the entire Grizzlies bench.
Right.
He had 24.
I don't want to hit on the Kings stuff at all. The Kings were out of their minds last night. Trey Lyles averages like 10 points a game, maybe less, and he was
7, yeah.
And he was popped off for 20 something last night. The Kings were such an outlier. Our bench, I'm not as concerned about either, because normally you have Tyus is that true sort of veteran presence for that bench, runs the unit. And if not, you're able to mix and match. But with Steve-O out and Ja out, those are 2 essential pieces. The bench was pretty much going to suck unless somebody on the Grizzlies bench was out of their mind. So I'm not worried about the game in particular, right? I more so just want to take from it what we can see going through the season. And going through the season, you need to get Zaire minutes, because you don't want to count on him in the playoffs. Yeah. But you want to continue to develop him to the point where you're not scared to play him in the playoffs. And he's not there yet by a long shot, especially defensively, man. I know what he can do defensively. His length is incredible. His athleticism is awesome. He is late on every rotation. He is clearly not on the same page with the rest of the team. And listen, they were all out of whack last night. They've been out of whack on this road trip. Zaire is the one person who comes in on the team consistently, and there's a miscommunication.
Yeah.
Every time he's switching and somebody else isn't. He's not switching and somebody else is. It's all the time with the dude. And it's getting a little bit to the point where I don't understand why that's still happening. Like, he's not been in the rotation for very long. He's not been playing a bunch of games.
Is that coaching or is that the player?
If everybody else is doing it,
right?
Which one? It's a player. If everybody else is on the same page, it's a player. And listen, they all overhelp, which
overhelp.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
But I'm not talking about overhelping. I'm talking about guy switches, you don't. You switch, guy doesn't. You aren't picking up late. He just looks confused. And that's the stuff that I don't really understand why that's still happening, because it's been long enough that he should be in a rhythm in that sense. Again, not sky is falling, not concerned, not saying trade Zaire or anything like that. It's just something that's disappointing.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it is disappointing. And that's the thing is, like, we rely on our bench so much, unfortunately, but a lot of it, what we rely on them is for a little bit of the boost of the energy, right? Because Ja gives us that. But sometimes when we get off to bad starts, you bring in Tyus and the offense flows differently. Everybody kind of gets feeling where they should be feeling the right direction, and the offense gets back on track. The defense, especially from the bench unit, has been atrocious as of late. And that's kind of what I look at as well, is like, is it the West Coast? Is it the road? Is it just the middle of the season and they're just kind of hitting the wall right now? And that's okay. But we are just coming off of 11 game win streak. So I don't want to overreact too much, but I also want to see that I think this team has flaws, and I think they legit do. And I've never not seen the flaws, because I think that if you're able to score easier, then I think that a lot of times defense is easier to play because the ball is going through the hoop and they're having to take out of bounds, compared to bricks and trying to get back and trying to somehow emergency plan. We got to figure out who's guarding who, just guard whoever's closest to you. We can't set up properly. So that's half of the issue too as well. So I think a lot of things can get fixed by having a more consistent shooter coming off the bench. But if you look at last night, like, we have the ball and we're kicking out to wide open Tyus Jones, and he's burying, he's shooting very well. But imagine if we can rely on Tyus Jones to be the backup point guard who can still hit those if need be, but he doesn't have to play that certain role that we're like, hey, get the ball to Tyus to hit those open threes. What if we actually have somebody that's built for that role? Then you can allow Tyus to do his own thing where he can get to the floaters. He hits 1, maybe 2 3-pointers a game, but then you create more space for everybody else. You create more space for a guy like Ja Morant to do his work. That really fixes a lot of problems. When you're not shooting well, that hurts you on your defensive end, and that's what – just look at Dillon Brooks. He's not shooting well, and that's part of it too. Like, they need more consistent shooters, and we just don't have it right now.
Yep, and that's why you need somebody like a Malik Beasley, Gary Trent Jr., who are both on the market, right? The stuff with OG Anunoby that's out there, I think I said this on our last show. I really like OG Anunoby, but it doesn't make sense to bring him onto this team because I don't think he does. Dillon is obviously a huge slump. We got our group text going. I haven't had time to respond yet, but Dillon Brooks Island's underwater. Whatever, dude. Whatever. Dillon Brooks he gets all the flack. He was getting flack all through the Lakers game. Now I'm like, Ja just went 9 for 29, right? And we're hating on Dillon's shot selection. It definitely doesn't help when he throws up the layup like he did when they were down 18 or whatever. But listen, the game was well out of hand at that point. I'm not super concerned about it. Go get somebody so that Dillon Brooks isn't taking those shots, right? I mean, you saw the last game that they were clicking. Dillon took like 8 shots. He went like 4 for 8 from the field. And it was tied for Jaren only because they weren't getting Jaren shots. But other than that, he was fine in that role. He's settling into that pretty well. And you notice that when Dillon does start taking all these shots and he gets up into these 15, 16, 17 shot games, the Grizzlies are losing. But they're losing before he starts doing that, right? They are – he's taking those shots because nobody else is making shots either. And like, listen, last night he took a wing 3. He was wide open. He bricked it. But I'm like, guess what? If you threw Desire wide open in the corner, he's bricking it. Tyus is bricking it, who's one of our best 3-point shooters this year. Everybody was bricking shots last night. So
everybody.
I had to get that in because it keeps happening. And I'm like, I don't know why nobody notices Dillon's bad games are when Memphis is having bad games, and it's not Memphis is having a bad game because Dillon's having a bad game, right? It looks the other way around watching the game. But what we were talking about before, having that shooter to kick over to, because Tyus is obviously he's shooting, like I said, he's one of our best 3-point shooters. He's around 39-40% last time I looked. I don't know what he's at now, but still he's been shooting really well. That's not what you want him to do. It's not his game. It's not what he looks to do either. Get you a Gary Trent Jr. who can knock down those shots. He can score all over the floor. Get you a Malik Beasley who's able to do the same. He's showing an expanded game this year in Utah, which is fun to watch. And mainly get somebody who shoots 80-something above % from the free throw line as well, because that's my main concern with this team, hands down, far and away, period, end of sentence. Free throw shooting has to be better.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to fix, but defensive. Obviously the overhelping has been crazy bad. The rotation question, I think they'll figure themselves out. I think they're trying things to see what works and see what sticks to the wall. I do think that is hurting a guy like Conchar, who they're trying to put in there, and he just is not doing well. He's playing 10 minutes a game. But I think it's really hurting a guy like Roddy who can't get into a role. I think that's the biggest issue.
Well, I want to give props where they're due. I thought Jitty was doing Jitty things against the Lakers. I thought he was one of the few people who showed up and was. I mean, I don't think the box score is going to reflect it. I haven't actually looked back at it, but I don't remember him having a great game. But you saw him doing the things he's there for. He's sneaking around, getting sort of wolf steals. He's getting offensive rebounds, a lot of activity. The problem is he's just not doing it enough to warrant giving him those minutes still over Roddy, in my opinion. Yeah. And Roddy has a chance to be a real regular season contributor. Playoffs, TBD. But the overhelping thing, I think, is part of their scheme. And I do want to say it sort of goes along with the attitude thing, in my opinion. The mentality thing, I don't know if attitude is the right word. People can take that and run with it. I'll say the mentality part, where I'm not worried about that as much in the playoffs, because I think they, as much as these past few games want to prove me otherwise, I think they learned some lessons last year against the Warriors about every possession counts. You need to be locked in, and they're going to be on a string come playoffs. So I'm not as concerned about that. But if it's something they haven't learned that needs to happen, because in the playoffs that's a problem, I don't think that's going to show up when the games matter most. But that's just me. I could be wrong, but personally, not worried about it.
You're probably wrong. You know what's not wrong is calling into our guy, Zach Jaworski, State Farm. Let them know that the Grizz 901 team sent you. They are our presenting sponsor, and they're good people. Give them a call over at 901-443-4798. You can go and find them on the web and get a free quote. ZachInsuresMemphis.com. That's ZACH, ZachInsuresMemphis.com. Whether it's home, auto, jewelry, if you need to do that. If you need to do anything, condo, renters, any kind of insurance at all that you can think of, go call our friends over at Zach Jaworski State Farm, where they treat you like family. Just let them know that we sent you. I promise you, Zach and his team will take good care of you. So let's go ahead and get into a little bit more of what I kind of have off the top of my head. And we're not going to spend too much longer. We're going to get out of here soon. But I think we're on the same page of make the move. Right? You're saying go for it, make the move. All right. So I want to ask you one question. We have our guy, Dillon Brooks. He has not been as much of the trade discussion as of late. A lot of it has been based around guys like Conchar and Danny Green. That's Grizz Twitter. That's what everybody wants to do. Send out guys like that. Even Xavier Tillman, right? Those are low-level guys. They're making, $2 to $4 million a year at max. So they're not going to make up much space when you trade them off. But a guy that does is a guy like Dillon, who's making, I think he's making 17. So I'm going to ask you a question. I just need one name out of you. I don't need multiples. I need one name out of you. And this is very much, you have no clue that this is coming. Who is the one guy that you're going after if you have to give up Dillon Brooks? I know it's going to be a hard one.
I don't know if he's available.
Okay. Hit it with me. I'll pull up the numbers while we're doing this.
Jason Tatum. No, the name that comes to mind, I tend to think he's not available, but I was going to say Siakam. If anyone's available. Ooh. I think it's a Raptor. It's Siakam or Anunoby. Again, I don't think the Anunoby one, because you're giving up assets for someone who I think is a better player. Again, we went all over this with Pop, but just to recap, I think Anunoby is a more talented player than Dillon Brooks.
Yeah.
I don't think he is that much more talented than Dillon to warrant giving up 3 firsts plus Dillon to go get him. And I don't see him bringing the heart and soul factor that, I mean, I'm sure you heard Desmond Bain talk about on Old Man in the 3 with JJ Redick. That matters. I think that there's an intangible there that matters. So that's why that didn't make sense. But if you're going to give up somebody, if you're going to give up Dillon, you better bring somebody in who can make up for what he does purely skill-wise, at least. And Anunoby, I think, does that. But I think if they're going to do that, they won't move Dillon unless it's for someone that's big. I don't see them moving Dillon for Anunoby, right? Siakam is a needle mover they could do that for, though.
Okay.
I think people forget how awesome Siakam is when he's not the number one, much less he's been awesome this year as the number one, right? He's sort of found that groove. People forget what he was doing when he had like Kawhi and Kyle Lowry there. I mean, dude's a freaky third, fourth option. I mean, he's a freaky second option. So, yeah, I'll stick with Siakam. I may change my mind by the end of the pod, but for now, it's Siakam.
Yeah, so what I always think of is kind of who is possible, right? Just like you kind of did, is who's available, what we can do. Siakam is at 35 million and Dylan Brooks is at 11. So obviously there's a lot of room to make up. And so Siakam and Danny Green, that doesn't work. The Grizzlies are still 8 million short. So you'd have to figure out 8 million to get to that point. So I think that would be tough. And that's the thing is, and that's the trouble with finding out a big player, right? Somebody that's making that much money is you got you got to have paid a player that much money and move them. The only person that you could really just try to make it make sense, Jaren, you're not doing that. You could do Steve-O in there somehow, and then that makes up, Steve-O and Dylan. We obviously saw from last night, Steve-O is a big key to this team. I don't think Steve-O, especially now that he's extended, I don't think you're going to go ahead and move him at all. I think that's going to be a tough one to go get. I really do. But you got to think of Dylan is an expiring contract. Okay. So I'm going to just throw this out there. And I know people probably are kind of tired of hearing about it, but you can look at Dylan for OG. I don't love OG, but I think that I think you can make it work with Dylan for the simple fact that you might not have to give up too much more than just a trade for Dylan, OG, and some picks. I really do think that's possible. You can even try, if you want, Danny Green and maybe throw in some fillers, which would be a guy like Jake LaRavia, maybe a guy like John Conchar, and try to make it work. I think that's possible, but I just don't know if it will. But you got to think of a guy like OG. His contract is a little bit different. He has this year at 17, next year at 18, and then a player option the following year, the 24-25 season for 19 million. Okay. So that's something to think about when people are looking at contracts, is he's actually under contract and a decent contract for the next couple of years, a contract you actually think and hope you can probably get Dylan Brooks at. But I just don't know if that's what you want to do as an organization. So you're coming to the last year of a guy like Dylan. I think it's going to be decision time. And maybe they say, hey, we're going to try it out and we're going to go for a bench player like a Gary Trent Jr., make a player like that. I've talked about it before, maybe a Luke Kennard. I would love to have gotten Devin Vassell from the Spurs, but he obviously is now hurt. So I think there's a lot of different ways they can go about it. But I think what you're going to see first is you're going to see the Grizzlies see what they have in Danny Green. And if they have something in Danny Green, they might try to put something together and go get one player. But if they think they have it in Danny Green, unfortunately, I think we're not making any moves at all, which would – I think that would be a downfall of this. And it's not because they're lazy and they're not wanting to. I just think that they feel confident that this team, just adding one shooter for free pretty much without losing anything extra, they think that that'd be a good decision. What do you think?
I think you can go get Malik Beasley. Will be hard because Danny Ainge, not Danny Ainge's fault. The Minnesota Timberwolves went ahead and sent basically all of France over for Rudy Gobert. So it's going to be hard to squeeze Malik Beasley for cheap. Yeah, and they basically traded young and apparently better Rudy Gobert in that trade and Walker Kessler. I think you can go get a Gary Trent Jr. for picks, and you send over a couple of young players for salary stuff. And I think you send over the Jake LaRavias of the world, and if they turn into the next coming of Mike Miller or Kyle Korver, you eat that. That's fine. You're okay with that. Because guess what? He's not going to turn into that until your championship window is either wide open in the middle and you've already got more experience because of the guys you brought in, or your championship window has for some reason closed, right? And so I think you do that. I think you make the move. I think you're not going to play these guys All of these guys are not going to be a part of your future plans. If they are,
True.
it will be truly unprecedented to have every single one of them. Trade the promise of Jake LaRavia. Jake LaRavia could easily turn into an awesome shooter, an awesome piece that we look down the road in 5 years and we trade him and think, dang.
And you can sell that. You can
But
sell
guess
that
what?
promise.
There's only 30 teams in the NBA. There's only 12 players on it. Most guys don't turn out. They don't. Sell the promise of what he can be for something you know what you're getting that's a compliment to this core. And if he turns into the promise, dang.
Yeah.
These rings that will make me feel too much better about it, I guess. Right? Like, take the shot. Listen, and I trust the front office. I know people, I see it all the time on Twitter. Oh, I'm glad that you know better than the coach in the front office. I don't pretend to know better. I don't pretend to be able to do their job. Nobody's batting 1,000, including the front office. Somehow I've turned from a front office defender after they drafted Zaire to the front office like, hey, I don't have to agree with everything they do. We forget about Justice Winslow. Massive swing and a miss, right? We traded 2 guys that meant a lot to Ja and the young guys for a guy who didn't pan out.
But you know what, though, about that? I love that they took a chance. Yes, I love they took a chance.
Same. And it was not a big chance. I said it a lot at the time. It was not a mass. Like, it wasn't like it was high reward, low risk.
Yeah.
But now I think the risk is in not capitalizing on what you have in the present. I think the risk is sort of flipped in that. So I'm not going to be mad if they don't. I'm not going to lose my mind. I think it's a mistake not to. But I'd be happy for them to prove me wrong and them do awesome with whatever they do. So
I don't want them to not make a move to say they are keeping this together. I also don't want them to make a move just to say they made a move. I think it has to be the perfect storm. And I think people forget that you have to have 2 to tango. So you have to have another GM that says, hey, I'm willing to do this with you. A lot of times in the West, you don't do West on West trades most of the time. Sometimes you can, but most of the time it's going to come from the East and the West making the decisions. And, Masai, he's pretty good GM. So you're dealing with 2 GMs, 2 front offices that I feel confident in the Raptors and Memphis, that it would be tough. But we'll see. There's going to be a whole lot of trade talk going on. Something I do want to share with y'all that we're going to do next week is we're going to do more of a crossover week, which would be a lot of fun. We have 3 shows. We have the free basketball show. We have the no bluffing show. And we also have our normal Grizz 901. Thank you for supporting us, first of all. Second of all, we're going to do some crossover. So we're going to send Nate on one of the shows. We're going to bring Ryan on one of the shows. And we're going to send who knows what. We're going to have, instead of just being me and Nate or me and Ryan, we're going to have some different people hop up on the shows. I do know that we have certain plans for the Pacers game. I think it's a Sunday night game. I'm going to bring on the free basketball crew, right? So it's going to be Ryan, who is a regular on here, but also Cody, who a lot of people don't know. Bring them 2 on here. He's always
that's going to be fun.
Off the wall. We have all recorded many times together, us 3, but a lot of people haven't heard that. And so on this platform, we want to bring them on here so you can hear a little bit about them, their takes. I'm going to try to get Chris on here as well to do a post-game show. But also I know we're going to send Nate over to do the free basketball podcast if we can make it happen. The rumors are,
dude.
The rumors are there's 2 different segments, and because they only have 1 show, I said, why don't we split it up? So I think it was actually Ryan's idea, but we're going to send Nate over to do the last mascot standing tournament, which is off the wall, crazy fun. We thought Nate would be a great idea for that. And then we'll have somebody else go over, do a little bit more of the Grizzlies talk. And so I think it'll be a good time, but make sure you stay tuned. So next week, the last week of January, you're going to have every podcast is going to have a little bit of crossover on it. It might not have their same people. It might just add them into it. But we're going to see what we can do and change things up just to give a little bit of flavor for 1 week. But last thing, we're going to get out of here. I don't want to spend a minute, maybe 2 on this. The Warriors game. What are your predictions on this game? How it's going to go? Very short. I don't need much in-depth knowledge on it because I'm hoping it's a win, and I'm hoping we can actually do a post game that night.
Yeah, I hope it's a win. I would not bet anything on money line or anything like that. I would bet Bane points and Ja double-double. I think it's going to be a Ja double-double game. I think Bane pops off. I would count on Klay Thompson popping off if I had to guess, because he hates us, and the feeling is pretty much mutual. But I think big Klay game. It's gonna be a battle of stars late. I think if it's close, if the Grizzlies show up with energy, which I think they will, but I would have thought they would against the Suns too. I think it's a back and forth late where you get Ja, Steph, Klay, Bane going back and forth. I would like to say it's a big Jaren game, but I don't think it is. So I think you get big games out of Bane and Ja. I think Klay shows up. I think Steph does cool stuff late, and then we'll see where the pieces fall.
Yeah. The Grizzlies are going to be by far behind the 8 ball here because they're going to be on the West Coast. They're obviously struggling, but they've had a pretty decently hard schedule, not games wise in general of who the teams are playing, just by like the days. Yep. But if you look at this, and something I pulled up, and I want to throw this out there in the ethos, and who knows, probably Warriors Twitter will find this. The Warriors this year, they had a game on Wednesday. Their next game was a Sunday against who? The Grizzlies. And then if you look at the Grizzlies played earlier. Earlier this year, the Grizzlies played against. Did I lose it? This is terrible audio. The Grizzlies. Sorry, yes. So they were playing on more of a third game in 4 days when they played against the Warriors, and so they're not getting a lot of time off. They played a Friday game, and then they played a Sunday game, right? After they just played a game 2 days prior. So it was like bang, 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 and then the Warriors had 2 days off. Well, if you look at this schedule again, let's look at the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are now coming off of, it was a back-to-back with a day rest, and then you play the Warriors. Like, that is the frustrating part. When, honestly, the Warriors, they haven't played for 2 days. And so the last time they played, I believe it was Sunday. Let me pull this up real quick because I didn't get that notes for me real quick. But the last time they played was literally 2 or 3 days ago. That's the frustrating part of all this, is the fact that they're waiting so long. They haven't played since Sunday, and their next game is against the Grizzlies on Wednesday. That is frustrating. As a fan, I know it just magically works out like that, but this is our rival who's literally getting that kind of time off before we come into it. This is me yelling at the clouds. It's frustrating because I want them on a back-to-back with a day rest.
Man, I don't care. Show up and win the freaking game. You're the second youngest team in the NBA. I know it's fourth youngest, but minus Danny Green, who doesn't play. Second youngest team in the NBA. And by the way, every time the Grizzlies have 2 days rest, they show up looking like they haven't played basketball in a month.
Right.
So I'm tired of the rest stuff. Listen, it's the only time I'm okay with rest stuff is if it gets to like the fourth quarter last night where the Grizzlies clearly didn't have the legs.
Right.
They just ran out of the legs late. I'm okay with that. Otherwise, show up and win the freaking game. The Suns came out and freaking were beating you by 30 in the first half on the second half of back-to-back a couple of nights ago. It's not a back-to-back. You've gotten regular rest. Show up and play basketball.
I like it.
The rest thing with the Grizzlies, I'm so tired of hearing about it because we freaking moan about it all the time, and I've been one of the biggest ones about it. But I just look at it, I'm like, well, when the Grizzlies get 2 days rest, they suck. And it's like, oh, the Grizzlies don't get foul calls. Guess what? They shoot like 20% from the free throw line anyways. So why am I complaining about foul calls? Which, by the way, they should just shut up about the referees. They're only digging themselves further into a hole, but that's for another podcast. When it comes to rest, show up and win the game. Who cares how much rest the other team had? You're young. Play basketball. Win. No excuses.
Spicy Nate. I like it. That's a good way to end the show. I just hate the Warriors so much. I really hope they win. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to play out well. But you're going to have two guys who Steve-O supposedly he was walking with a prominent limp. But Steve-O is going to play that game. Ja is going to play that game. I have no doubt in my mind we should be full health. I think this is, like you said, big game out of Bane. I think Ja is going to go off as well because there's nobody that can guard him on that team. And I think that this is a big Ja game. So that's all we have. Stay tuned. We're going to try to do a post-game show Wednesday after the Warriors game, win or lose. If it gets too late, like it was last night, we'll try to hop on the next morning and try to put out something. So if you're hearing this, obviously it is a Tuesday, right? We didn't do it last night. We're doing it today, and we're not live. So thank you for listening on the podcast, but also thank you for subscribing, giving any reviews that you have, and always watching us on YouTube. You can see Dapper Dan today. I'm a little bit more dressed up, a little bit more. I'm out of my home office. I got to actually come into the office a little bit. So had to hit this before working today. It's beautiful. But as we always say, let's have a good week. Be nice and tell your friends.